Last Sunday, Reverend Shannon introduced us to this book, Ordinary Mysticism, Your Life as Sacred Ground by Mirabai Starr. And we're going to explore a little bit more of this book today. But last week, Reverend Shannon taught us the important things that happen to us mentally, emotionally, and spiritually when we take God, power, love, power out of the sky, away from us, and put it within and everywhere. All that we are and all that we see. This is the most important work of right-sizing God, because God is so much more than just this something somewhere, right? It is here everywhere. We are here in our center. We are what is called a panentheistic teaching. Panentheistic. Isn't that a fun word? I'm going to break that down a little bit. Pan means all of the things. Okay? Theism is what we believe about God, spirit, power, source, universe, your word, fill in the blank. That's theism. So pan means everywhere, theism. And there are pantheists out there. They believe that God is in everything, that where there is matter, there is consciousness. And where there is consciousness, there is matter. We are not pantheists. We are panentheists, which means that, yes, we believe that God is in everything and this is an important and, God transcends everything. That's what that little extra syllable means, the end, the panentheism. So we here, Reverend Shannon and I, the things that we teach is called panentheism. You get to decide if that's for you or not. I just want you to know that that is the groundwork of what we're talking about. This is also what Mirabai Starr teaches, in fact. This is what the mystic traditions of every religion have taught. That yes, there is a power, it is greater than us, it is everywhere present, and indeed, it transcends the everyday. The philosopher Ken Wilber taught us about the three faces of God. Actually, the first person to talk about this was Jesus, but we can have that conversation later. The philosopher Ken Wilber talked about the three faces of God, the divinity that I am, the divinity that I am in relationship with, that's the you. There's the God as me, there's the God as you, and then there's the infinite divinity that is beyond all knowing. Isn't that beautiful? This means that everything that we see, everything that we feel, everything that we experience, everything is a divine expression. Everything is a manifestation of this divine intelligence. And if we turn that around, we can begin to see that everything is indeed a symbol. You know, we have really brilliant minds. I'm fascinated by the way the mind works. And our conscious mind is somewhere between 1 and 10% of what is actually happening. Our unconscious mind, our subconscious mind, depending on whether you're awake or asleep, works in symbols. Everything that we see, everything that we are, is a symbol to our subconscious mind. Isn't that fascinating? I found this word placeholder coming up for me, and here's how. I had dinner last week with some girlfriends, and as usual, the conversation turned to the ex-husbands. As one does. And one of these girlfriends has a husband who is particularly difficult for us, and I don't need to, be an armchair psychiatrist and label him, but I could. But I won't, because I am love in all the places. Okay. I personally struggle with this particular ex-husband because he has done a lot that has hurt people that I love. And I really struggle with that. And as we were talking about the ex-husbands, I had I had a deeper understanding of something that I have suspected all along, and it is that the reason that he is particularly difficult for me is not only because he has done things that hurt people that I love, but because he's a placeholder for things that I have experienced in my past. And so in so many ways, I'm not even having a relationship with him. I'm having a relationship for what he represents about my own pain. And he just happens to be one of those people that shines brightly as a representative of my own pain. You might have some of those people. You might have some of those people. But the thing that was kind of interesting to me, because the other topic that the conversation naturally turned to was our struggle with the political zeitgeist of our nation and the world. America isn't the only country going through this right now, I'll have you know. It's not just us. It's a global consciousness that we are working through. And I realized that there are certain politicians that hold that same energy for me. And that helped me. As we were kind of unpacking that a little bit, because aren't girlfriends who can unpack at that level like the best? The best. As we were unpacking that a little bit, I realized that in many, many ways, it's easier for me personally to do my forgiveness work with the person who is more distant than it is the person who is closer. That person who is more distant is a placeholder for a lot of pain for me personally. And it's an opportunity to do some work around that. So I was thinking about placeholders a lot this week when Reverend Shannon called me and told me that we were going to have these beautiful flowers today. For those of you who are watching just the talk, I'm just going to let you know that these flowers represent a lot of grief in our community. They're in honor of several truly beloved members of our family who have passed in the last week. And so these flowers are a placeholder, right? They can be a placeholder for our grief. I love dahlias. I'm going to take one. I'll put it back, I promise. I hope they aren't rubber banded or anything. Look at this beautiful little lion. Isn't she gorgeous? And the color. These flowers are a placeholder for the grief that we feel at the loss of our loved ones. And that grief itself is a placeholder for the love that we feel and that we feel bereft of, right? For me, there's a certain amount of comfort in the permission that these flowers give to be fully present to all of the feelings. There's a comfort in that. Mirabai Starr gently teaches us that your pain is in proportion to your love. Your pain is in proportion to your love. Some of you may be newer to the community, and you might have a lot of compassion and empathy for the grief that some of us are experiencing it, but you might see these flowers differently. You might see it as a placeholder for beauty, a placeholder for beauty. Beauty is very precious because where we find beauty, we find God. And when we look hard enough, we can see below the surface to the energy of the divine within the flower. Have you ever heard of the Buddha did something called the flower sermon? In complete silence, he was in the grove surrounded by his pupils, and in complete silence, he held up a flower. And the one who smiled, he named his successor. Because when we find beauty, we find God. And where we find God, we find freedom. And where we find freedom, we are in nirvana. The flower sermon There are other kinds of placeholders. I mentioned before, there are certain politicians and world leaders and all kinds of people out in the world that are representations of a current energy in the world. And as I was thinking about that in terms of being a placeholder, it made me start to wonder how often I invest my pain in people. Some people call it projection. How often do I invest my pain in people and then empower them to walk around the world with it? I don't think that's fair to either of us, to be honest. That person doesn't deserve to be a placeholder for my pain, and I deserve to own all of my experience, all of it, all of it, all of it. One other placeholder I want to mention. I was in a class with the absolutely brilliant Dr. Jesse Jennings a few weeks ago. He's a minister down in Spring, Texas. Is Charlie here today? He's my fellow former Texan. Dr. Jesse said that there is new scholarship that is showing that there wasn't one Jesus walking the earth at the turn of that particular century. There were at least 7 Yeshua. I know. There were at least 7 Yeshua walking the planet, consumed with the all-loving nature of God. There were at least 7 placeholders for a relationship with the divine that is so pure, so sacred, and so holy that you could turn water into wine. Or for me these days, wine into water. Because the truth is that the Christ consciousness doesn't belong to one wonderful, marvelous being. It belongs to all of us. And even then it did. There wasn't one placeholder for truth. You are a placeholder for truth. We are a placeholder for truth. All of us can be placeholders for love. The invitation here is to become conscious of the placeholder energies that come up into our awareness. Because this shows us where the work is. It shows us where our healing work is, but it also shows us where our consciousness is. Looking at these flowers today, I experience grief because it's a permission for me to experience that grief. Other days, I look at these flowers in utter wonder. Look at God showing off again. Some days, back when we used to have the flowers up here, I would look at the flowers with utter irritation because I could not see Darcy Bradley sing. And I was doing this the whole time. Because the placeholders aren't invested with the energy that we are giving them. They are showing us the energy that we are giving them. And all of life is a placeholder trying so hard to show us who we are, where we are, what we believe. All of it is a placeholder. And our work becomes to learn how to live in amazement at it all. The 20th century Jewish philosopher Abraham Joshua Heschel, an amazing teacher, said our goal should be to live life in radical amazement, to get up in the morning and look at the world in a way that takes nothing for granted. Everything is phenomenal. Everything is incredible. Never treat life casually, because to be spiritual is to be amazed. To be spiritual is to be amazed. Because to be spiritual is to recognize that divinity in ourselves and then to do the work to recognize that divinity everywhere else. Mirabai Starr teaches us about a lot of beautiful things in this book. And there's a really brilliant paragraph in here where she teaches us about how wonder actually changes our brains. Okay, so there's a pattern to our neurons called the default mode network. The default mode network is exactly what you might think it is. It's the habitual patterning of the way our neurons typically fire. This is what wonder does to them. For those of you following along in your textbook, this is at the bottom of page 83. Neuroscience tells us that when we experience awe, our default mode network grows quiet. This network is the seed of the monkey mind, that habitual mental impulse that chases after every banana of thought that pops up. It can be especially active when we are between tasks. The default mode network is linked to our sense that we are an individual somebody up against all the other individual somebodies of the world. Some would call that ego. Some, not all, would call that ego. When the default mode network, when the DMN grows quiet, in the wake of wonder, our awareness opens to the rest of creation. We turn our attention to the needs of the collective, and we spontaneously wish for the well-being of others. This is what I love. The compassion awakened in the heart of the amazed is not fluffy. It is like a deep, still pool. Studies show that people who experience awe have an increased capacity for critical thinking. At the same time that your empathy is stimulated, your BS detectors in your brain are lit up. You are less likely to be manipulated by empty arguments and political rhetoric. When your mind is blown and your heart expands, your humility deepens. You become aware that the world is magical, mysterious, and heartbreaking. You know that you know nothing, really, and this is not a problem. It is a cause for celebration. I don't know about you, but I don't often celebrate knowing nothing. As a matter of fact, when I feel like I don't know about something, I get deeply uncomfortable, like really uncomfortable. Do you ever feel that way? Yeah. I'm pretty sure that it's a reference to some kind of childhood shame, but sometimes this discomfort itself keeps me from doing the right thing, keeps me from doing the kind thing, keeps me from extending myself in risk. Like, do you ever not ask someone's pronouns because you are afraid you're going to do it wrong? Guilty. I have done that. Do you ever shy away from calling your friend who is in profound grief because you're so afraid that you're going to say something and make it worse? I've done that. I follow several racial justice educators online, and there are times when I am brought to my knees with shame, when I am made aware of things that I have done that are done out of pure ignorance, but they're not the right way to do it. And that fear of not knowing and getting it wrong keeps us from trying. One of the things that I have learned from taking classes with Jen Moore is that the only thing we can get wrong is not trying. Allow ourselves to try to do the right thing and be corrected. And let it be okay. Let it be okay. For those of you who are just watching the Just the Talk video, I just want to let you know that our social justice educator, Jen Moore, is doing a 3-week Sunday afternoon workshop called Practical and Spiritual Tools for Uprooting Racism, and it is hybrid. It is online and in person, and it is important. It is important. It is important. I have done this work with Jen. She's a phenomenal teacher. But the idea that she empowers us with tools of learning, you know what she's not going to do? She's not going to tell us the right way to do things. Sorry, I know. It's really disappointing, isn't it? She does have a lot of suggestions about things you can try. But you know what she is going to do? She's going to empower every single one of us to do the right thing and to be okay when we get it wrong and to try again and again and again and again. Because what I have learned over many years of working with this very powerful ego is that being wrong doesn't actually hurt. It doesn't hurt at all. And giving other people the opportunity to teach us is actually a blessing for everyone. It's a blessing for everyone. These things, racism, ableism, sexism, sizeism, all of the isms, ageism, all the isms, these cultural constructs get in the way of our ability to see God in everything. If we are looking from a lens that says not enough, then our experience is not enough, right? We know that. But let's talk sexism. If you have an assumption that women, for example, are inferior, then that is the energy that is being perpetrated in the world. Are you going to be able to see the divine in that thing that you think is inferior if God transcends all knowing? No. Anything that we consider inferior, by definition, we are removing the sacred from. We're taking the deity out of it. We don't have to do that. So all of these isms, every single one of them, get in the way of our ability to see God in everything. They get in the way of our ability to keep our hearts open in that wonder and awe, to calm our brilliant brains, open our hearts, and be in awe. Because an open heart is a prerequisite to awe. To open our hearts this week, we have a writing prompt from Mirabai Starr, and it's simply this. Finish this phrase. I am amazed. I am amazed. I'll tell you what I'm amazed at. I'm amazed at you. I'm amazed at your willingness to keep showing up in this broken world and to keep doing the work to find God in it. You bring me to my knees. I am amazed at your willingness to continue to do the work to see God in each other, even when it's hard, to do the forgiveness work, to do the loving work, to be loving kindness on this planet. I'm amazed by you. Seeing the divine in you helps me to see the divine everywhere, even in the ex-husbands. Seeing the courage that you have, the courage to live in the not knowing, the courage to look at the hard places with love, the courage to do the next right thing again and again and again and again. You are amazing. You bring me to a place of wonder and awe, and I thank you for that. You are a placeholder in the world, my friends. You are a placeholder for me of what God looks like in shoes, as Reverend Shannon says. You are a placeholder for loving kindness. You are a placeholder for divine love. And I'm amazed at you.